Welcome back to Blue Collar Woodworking. I'm Stumpy Nubs, and in this episode, we're going to tell you everything there is to care about when it comes to sharpening with diamonds, stones, or paper. We'll have some innovative money-saving ideas, a couple of great tool reviews, and a look behind the scenes in the workshop here over the past week. So stick around. I think you're going to like this one.
Last few weeks here at the wood shop, everything's been out of control. We got a lot of projects going on, and Stumpy's going through one of his issues.
All right, we need to make some changes around here.
Stumpy, you do this all the time.
I don't care. I want this bench bigger and higher because I want to slide some tools underneath it.
Stumpy's always moving things around, and it's always the big stuff too. He's just out of control.
Yeah, I know. You guys can work in any old mess, but I'm the one that does the stuff around here, and I need an efficient workspace.
Okay, I hear you, but a week ago this was efficient. What's up now?
Well, I'm a professional. You wouldn't understand.
The bench is like 20 feet long. It weighs 600 pounds. It's all nailed together. How are we going to raise it 2 feet?
Tear it apart. I never liked it anyway.
You designed it.
That was like a year ago. My tastes have become more sophisticated since then. What these guys don't realize is that a small shop is always a work in progress. I mean, your work patterns change. You get a new tool here and there. You find ways to make the space more efficient. I mean, you can't be afraid to take on a project like this.
What Stumpy's got to realize is big projects make big messes. And we got a lot of stuff going on around here, and he's tearing out benches.
What is the highest bench that would still be comfortable to use a radial arm saw on?
I like it the way it is.
Less talk, more broom.
I wouldn't go any higher than the table saw.
I want to be able to slide the table saw underneath the bench.
You want to slide a 700-pound table saw under the bench?
What about the big disc collection arm?
This too. I want to be able to slide the table saw with the arm and everything underneath the bench. So it's got to be higher than that arm.
You gotta be kidding me.
If you got a small shop, you know what I'm talking about. You gotta make use of every inch of space. And the best way to do that, I think, is with mobile tools. I mean, when I got a big project going on and I need some extra space, I want to be able to just move that table saw right out of the way. I don't think that's too much to ask.
A saw with a mobile base? Nothing new. The problem is getting the bench up high enough to get the saw and the dust collection system underneath. You're going to need a ladder to get up at them radial arm saws.
First things first, we need a mobile base for this big behemoth. Tell Joy to Google it or something.
I've been telling you we needed one of those for weeks.
Yes, but then it was your idea. Now that it's my idea, it's making more sense. Go ahead. This segment of the show is just for woodworkers. So if the kids or the missus are in the room, tell them to take a hike. We're about to get into some of that super secret stuff that we woodworkers only talk about in low whispers or write on secret notes and tie to rocks and throw through each other's workshop windows. You know what I'm talking about. The most mysterious woodworking skill of all, sharpening. We're going to take an in-depth look at the most common ways to get your tools sharp, fast, and easy. From sandpaper to stones to water-cooled super sharpeners. We'll show you the pros and the cons, the ups and the downs, the dollars and the cents of everything sharpening, so that when we're done, you'll have all the information you need to decide which method is best for you and your workshop, your time, your tools, and your budget. This time, we're going to talk about manual sharpening methods, and the most basic of them all is called Scary Sharp. This is a great method for woodworkers who are just getting started and they want to get into sharpening without shelling out a lot of money. But that doesn't mean it's only for beginners. Many professionals prefer this method because it's fast, clean, and disposable. All you need is the right type of sandpaper, a good flat surface, and a way to hold the blade. Let's start with the paper. The most common kind of hardware store sandpaper is garnet, which is a naturally occurring mineral that's also made into expensive jewelry. But before you start rubbing your chisels on your wife's ring, you should know that garnets aren't very hard. Translate that into sandpaperese, and you have dollar store grade sandpaper that won't cut tool steel very well at all. Another easy to find sandpaper is the black wet or dry stuff. This is silicon carbide, and it's attractive for sharpening because it's actually designed for metal. Don't believe me? You could try it out yourself. Take it over to your neighbor's house tonight and use it on the hood of his car. You'll find that it works like a charm because this stuff is commonly used in auto body work. So we know it'll cut tool steel. The only question is, how well? While all those teeny tiny little particles of silicon carbide are extremely hard, they're also very fragile. This can be a good thing because when those bits start to wear out, they actually just fracture, leaving jagged edges behind, which can continue cutting. But that can also be a bad thing because they're so brittle that they just keep breaking up, and before long you're left with nothing but dusty paper. Which brings us to aluminum oxide, or as our British viewers would call it, aluminium oxide. It's not as hard as silicon carbide, but it's still hard enough to sharpen tool steel. It also isn't as fragile as silicon carbide, which means the particles won't crumble to dust. But because they don't break apart and expose new cutting edges, the particles tend to wear smooth and stop cutting over time. Most sanding belts are aluminum oxide, and while they suffer from the same deficiencies as regular aluminum oxide paper, the cloth backing makes it more durable. Some belts are made from zirconium oxide, which cuts faster and lasts longer, but they're expensive and pretty hard to find around my place. So what's the bottom line? Garnet sandpaper? No good. Silicon carbide cuts faster, but aluminum carbide lasts longer. To make your decision, you'll have to weigh the cost versus the speed versus availability around you versus your personal preference versus how much you really want to learn about sandpaper in the first place. Once you've settled on your type of sandpaper, it's all about style. Do you want to impress the ladies with the expensive cloth back belts? Do you go homemade with a bag of sand and a ream of notebook paper? Or do you just head over to the hardware store and try to make some sense out of whatever they've got on their shelves? Unfortunately, not all hardware store belts and papers are clearly marked, and some brands even add pretty colors to the grit, so you can't tell just by looking at it. So even if you know what kind of paper you want, you may have to just do some trial and error to see just what brands work best for you. And don't be fooled by the bargain brands. Even if it says it's made from the stuff you're looking for, many sandpapers sold in hardware stores are called open surface. What that means is more paper and less grit. Paper that's made specifically for metal, that's your best bet. Of course, you'll need something flat to put that paper on, and as soon as I go get into the cold one, I'm going to share some of my good ideas on how to save some cash in that area.
Chip here from the Stumpy Nubs workshop to tell you about our new website. It's bigger, better, and beautifuler than ever. With loads of videos, tips, tricks, reviews, look behind the scenes of blue-collar woodworking. That and a whole lot more is waiting for you at stumpynubs.com.
Stumpy's been wanting Joy to find a mobile base for this saw. The thing is, SawStop sent us one. We've been tripping over it for the last month.
Is that what that thing is? I thought it was another one of Chip's wheelchair parts.
I wish that thing has hydraulics.
Holy cow, that thing's heavier than Joy.
Holy wood chips. Look at that. It's got a hydraulic lift.
Now we've got a bigger problem. I don't know how we're going to get this 700-pound saw on top of that mobile base. It's not a matter of just sliding it on it. I mean, it sets actually down inside the base, so you got to lift the whole 700-pound saw up.
Joy could lift it if we told her there was a hamburger under there.
I don't know, I can lift like 500 pounds tops before my muscles start tearing out my shirt like the Hulk.
Randy broke the come-alongs. You know, if we tied a rope up there, wrapped it around the saw arbor, you turned it on, it may just lift it.
But one person's going to have to slide. All right, let's get it up where we're on the block, so don't turn it. See if you can slide underneath. I got it. All right.
Hit something to cover the back blocks down. Hey, I wouldn't worry about it. Saw stops are designed so you can't get hurt, right? Yeah. Well, I hurt the alignment. Where's your flashlight? We got a good bite where I'm not going to slip right now. That's what I wanted to know. That's what I said. Let's look first. Up once.
Oh yeah, baby. Well, it just goes to show you can accomplish just about anything with a little bit of teamwork, some motivational insults, a little bit of cussing and screaming. We got the saw stop on top of the mobile base. I got an ambulance ride. The stash got to see my impressive calf muscles, and Chip's no longer the only thing in the shop on wheels. So, win, win, win. Win. I think that's too many wins. Now, let's talk plates. I have a large collection, including several limited edition Elvis plates that make up my retirement fund. Man, I hope he's really dead. But the most useful are the flat surfaces I attach my sandpaper to for sharpening. Some people use precision machined lapping plates. They insist on absolute flatness to the billionth of an inch. I look at it this way. Old-timey woodworkers, they use stones, right? And those stones wear. In time, they have to be reflattened. So you take that stone and you rub it against another stone or something else. Some actually use the sidewalk outside the shop to flatten their stones. What I'm getting at is whetstone sharpening is not about precision flatness. Nobody takes their stones to a machinist once a week. You just need something reasonably flat. That's what I'm looking for in a surface plate. I want it to look flat. I want to be able to hold a straight edge up to it and up to the light, and I don't want to see a lot of that light coming underneath the straight edge. And that kind of flatness, it doesn't have to cost you a fortune. An inexpensive option is one of these acrylic trivets. You may remember we used these to make router plates a few months back because they're really tough, they're nice and flat, and you can cut them to whatever size you want on the table saw because they're just acrylic, even though they're hard as a rock. They cost about $10, but they can be hard to find. I got mine from Menards in the houseware section. If you don't have a Menards in your area, you may be able to find them online if you do some Google searching. They're made from the same stuff that solid surface countertops are made of. And the brand name on mine is Corinthian, 100% acrylic, which I believe Corinthian is also mentioned somewhere in the Bible. Huh, who knew that Paul was a woodworker? Even less expensive is a granite or marble floor tile. Sometimes surface plates that you can get in 3-4 inches thick at woodworking suppliers and cost like $1 billion are made out of granite. But you can get a granite floor tile for like $5. And if you grab a straight edge to check them before you buy, you can easily find one that's super flat. I've seen guys like Christopher Schwartz use one of these. So, you know what that means. They figured out a way to watch this episode before it even aired. Amazing. If you're really on a budget, the cheapest solution is just to put the paper right on your cast iron table saw or a joiner bed, something like that. The downside, of course, is the sharpening can be pretty messy. You've got adhesive sprays, water for lubrication. Sometimes I spilled my cold one. You don't want that stuff on top of your table saw. That brings us to my favorite option. And for this one, I made one of my fantastically popular Oscar snubbed blockbuster Stumpy's Favorite Things videos. They call it Scary Sharp for a reason. The Stumpy Nubs Dictionary of Woodworking Street Slang defines Scary Sharp as using sandpaper or honing films to create a tool edge sharp enough to cut paper, shave body hair, and impress people with micro-thin wood shavings. We could spend all day here talking about the pros and cons of the Scary Sharp method, but I haven't got all day. I got sharpening to do. Let me just bottom line it for you. It's fast and it doesn't cost much to get the supplies that you're going to need to get started. You just need the right kind of sandpaper, a honing jig, and a flat surface. And if you can get all that in one box, that's a no-brainer. And among the many no-brainers here at the Stumpy Nubs workshop is the Rockler plate glass sharpening system. It includes a high-quality honing jig, some high-quality adhesive-backed sandpaper, and a high quality tempered glass plate. In case you haven't already caught on, I think it's really high quality. It all starts with the jig. It's heavy duty, easy to adjust, and fits chisels and hand planes all the way up to over 2 inches wide at any bevel you want. This jig alone is perhaps the best selling style in all the woodworking world. Next comes the sandpaper, and this is the key to the Scary Sharp process. You have to have the right kind of paper, and this set comes with 4 grits of thick, durable silicon carbide strips. This isn't your typical hardware store sandpaper. It cuts tool steel faster and lasts much longer. And you get 2 strips of each grit, starting with an aggressive 220 and going up to a fine 600. They're big 4-inch wide pieces with a durable adhesive backing, so they aren't going to go anywhere. What you stick them on is the key to the whole set, and it's a thick, heavy, ultra-flat piece of tempered glass. You can put all 4 grits at the same time using both sides, so you don't wear out your paper backing by peeling it off and re-sticking it back on when you want to switch grits. There's these little silicone feet that stick to the bottom of the plate glass to keep it from sliding around on your bench, and this thing is going to stay flat and clean up easy forever. I've been using the set for a long time and I've really been impressed. It's an entire sharpening system in one box for one price, so you can get your sharpening done and back to what you want to be doing, woodworking. And for that, it's one of my favorite things. And that brings us to a sticky issue. How do you attach the paper to the flat surface? Get it? Sticky issue. The easiest way is to just use pressure-sensitive adhesive-backed sandpaper in either pre-cut strips or on a roll from woodworking suppliers. It's a little more expensive, but it's by far the most convenient way to go. Another option is to use spray adhesive. This works well because it allows you to stick down any kind of sandpaper. The downside, of course, is it's going to leave a sticky film when you peel it off. It's not a biggie at first, but as it builds up, it's going to make bumps underneath your paper, and that is intolerable. If you go this route, you'll have to break out the Goo Gone once in a while. I've even seen some smart woodworkers put a coat of paste wax on their plate. If you buff it up really nice, it'll create a long-lasting barrier between the plate and the adhesive. Take that tip to the bank. Spray adhesive is cheaper than self-adhesive sandpaper, but water is free, unless you buy that fancy clean water in the bottles. You can spritz down your plate and the water will suck that sandpaper onto the surface with a little thing called science. The sandpaper is going to move around a little bit, but what do you want for free? Of course, I wouldn't recommend doing this on your cast iron table saw top. So now you've got your paper and your plate. It's time to put them to work. I'm going to go grab a dull chisel and I'll be right back.
This show ain't free, folks. Help support woodworking infotainment by visiting the Stumpy store and checking out the project plans for a lot of what Stumpy makes. It's just a click away at stumpynubs.com.
So
this bench project is just going to be another one of Stumpy's big regrets. We're going to spend a whole week tearing this shop all apart. We're going to get behind on our projects, and then a month from now, he's just going to change it again.
All right, chop. All this stuff's got to be moved.
I just want to go on record. This is stupid.
Can't we wait until Randy gets back so he can do this?
Normally I'd have Randy do this because he'll literally do anything I ask without questioning it. But he's on leave for the next few days while we investigate the latest amputation, so I'm stuck here explaining everything to Stash and Chip. It's exhausting. I need blind obedience to make this shop run smoothly.
Hey, that's mine. That's why you're coming over to my house at night. Just sit on here. I got the bottom, you got the top.
So now that we've covered the options for the Scary Sharp system, I'm going to time myself while I take an old chisel through the grits so we can see just how long it takes and how sharp it gets with this method. First, since it's a damaged blade, we'll have to do a little repair work. Now that's only something you'll have to do once in a while. Most of the time you'll just be sharpening, which is where we'll pick up from here and see how long that takes. Now woodworkers smarter than I am and more experienced say that you can stop at 600 grit for a lot of blades, especially bench chisels and tools you're going to pound on. Planes and paring chisels should go higher, and 2000 makes an extremely sharp edge. Others like to go a lot higher than that, especially on fine tools like smoothing planes. We'll get into microfilms and stropping and stuff to get those really fine edges in a future episode. But the point is, it passes the thumbnail test, which means it won't slide across the nail without digging in, even with the least amount of pressure. And it passes the end grain test, which means that it cuts smoothly across soft wood fibers without tearing. So we've covered the scary sharp system. Personally, I didn't find it scary at all. Next up, sharpening stones.
The problem with this new bench project, Stumpies, it's 5 feet off the floor. Who wants to work 5 feet off the floor?
It's just like building a deck. Hey, it's not like I just woke up one day and said, you know, it'd be cool, a 5-foot high bench. There's a method to my madness, and once these guys see it, they're gonna be baking me a great big old apology cake.
So what's going on top of this thing?
Radial arm saws as soon as I can find them in this mess you guys made.
I don't bake cakes.
The oldest way of sharpening has to be with stones. You know it's an old way of doing things because an entire age is named after it. Cavemen were running around looking for rocks to rub their chisels against between dinosaur hunts and finger painting sessions on cave walls. Actually, the oldest known examples of cavemen woodworker finger paintings are found on walls in Arkansas, where the finest of sharpening stones are still mined today. I may have just made all that up, but in truth, stones have been used for sharpening since the dawn of woodworking, and fine sharpening stones are found all over the world, including here in the United States. Which brings us to a question as old as the stones themselves: oil or water? Oil stones are often made up of aluminum oxide or silicon carbide, which you'll remember from our sandpaper segment. But most commonly, at least here in the United States, they're a mineral called novaculite, which is mined in places like Arkansas, thus the name Arkansas stone. This stuff comes in several densities, from soft and coarse to hard and fine. They're very durable, but they cut steel pretty slowly. Aluminum oxide stones are man-made, and companies like Norton call them India stones. Just like aluminum oxide sandpaper, these cut steel quicker, but they don't produce as fine an edge as the denser Arkansas stones. Silicon carbide stones are made by companies like Norton too, and they call them crystalline stones. They cut even faster than aluminum oxide, but only come in coarse grits, so they're best for really aggressive work like repairing damaged blades. The reason these are called oil stones is because a lightweight oil is used to create a swarf on top of the stone's surface, keeping the pores from clogging with metal shavings. They're more durable than water stones, so they require less maintenance, but they cut slower, especially in the finer grits, and the oil makes them a little messy. Technically, any stone can be a water stone if you use water to lubricate it, but once you put oil on it, that's pretty much it. If you want to add water later, it's not going to mix. It's going to be like mixing oil and water, you know what I mean? Modern water stones are different though. Most are man-made from aluminum oxide, but unlike their oil-soaked brethren, water stones are held together with special binders that allow the cutting particles to break off once they become dull. As you sharpen, you're always exposing fresh little aluminum oxideites, so the cutting is much faster. And using water as a lubricant is a lot cleaner than oil. Of course, the downside is they wear much more quickly than oil stones, so you have to flatten them more often. It's said that when man-made water stones were first introduced into the old-timey workshops, the old-timers rejected them because they were newfangled claptrap or whatever they said back then. Some woodworkers even tossed them across the shop to get rid of them. But a strange thing happened, as often does when you throw things across the shop. The stones didn't break when they hit the floor. or the wall, or the shop boy's head. That impressed the old timers, who were always worried about breaking their fragile oil stones. And the rest, as they say, is history. The newest entry into the world of the stoned are the most beautiful, sparkly, romantic stones in the shop, the diamond stones. These babies are pretty self-explanatory. They're just flat plates covered with tiny diamonds. Now, unlike that giant engagement rock that you blew 10 years of your salary on before you realized you could buy your wife's affection with much cheaper jewelry, these diamonds are man-made. That's right, we can make diamonds now. What a world we live in. Several companies make diamond stones, but not all are created equal. The cheaper ones use something called polycrystalline diamonds, while the more expensive ones are called monocrystalline. Monocrystalline stones are made by companies like DMT, and they may cost a bit more, but they perform better and they last longer. Some diamond stones have holes in the surface, which I used to think was just another way the companies were trying to rip me off with less diamonds, like the holes in donuts. But actually, these holes have a purpose. They give the water and the metal shaving slurry a place to go so that they don't clog up the stone when you're sharpening. So, what's the bottom line on stone sharpening? Well, it's simple. Oil stones, they give the finest edge, but they cut slowly and they're a little bit messy. Water stones cut faster, but they don't go as fine as the oil stones and they need regular flattening. Diamond stones cut even faster and they stay flat, but they're expensive and they don't get as fine as some of the nicest oil stones. You might want to just use a combination of the three. Of course, diamond plate for quickly removing lots of material on a damaged blade, then maybe a couple of water stones for refining that edge, and finally a nice hard Arkansas stone for that final honing. Of course, as a confirmed cheapskate, I think I can come up with an idea or two to save you some cash in this area. Let me go grab a couple things and see what I can come up with.
Mustache Mike here from the Stumpy Nubs Workshop to tell you about my very own show. It's all about scroll sawing and wood turning with the unique twist that makes Stumpy Nubs podcast so popular. Check it out in Mustache Mike's Corner at stumpynubs.com.
The whole point of this workbench was to give us some more space here in the workshop. I've only got 400 square feet to work with, and when you put a big old table saw right in the middle of it, that really cuts down on the usable space. I want my stationary tools to be less stationary. I want to be able to just move them out of the way when I need some extra room to work on one of my giant masterpieces.
You know, I see the point of Stumpy getting the bench high enough to put everything underneath it. But really, we're not a shop full of giants around here.
I'm like 5'10", 6 foot, depending on who I'm trying to impress, and this bench puts the radial arm saw right at shoulder height. I think it's perfectly comfortable to use. Everybody else can just use a stool if they don't like it.
How am I supposed to reach these things?
Have you even once used these radial arm saws?
No, Stumpy never lets me.
These radial arm saws aren't used that often anyway. I mean, one's just used to cross-cut long boards, and the other one, sometimes I just keep a dado set in it. It's not like someone's going to be spending a couple hours on end standing at this new high bench. Give it some time. They'll come around. Okay, there's a story behind this. Once upon a time, I wanted to try out sharpening with diamond plates, but I didn't want to spend 200 smackers on the DMT 3-piece set. So I saw these little credit card sized diamond plates from DMC in the store, and I did what any cheapskate woodworker would do. I waited until they went on sale and I got them even cheaper. Of course, it's difficult to hold these little things in place while you're sharpening, so I decided to turn them into a poor man's sharpening system. What I did is I took a thick piece of MDF. I think an acrylic material would be even better, like one of those trivets or a cutting board or maybe a thick piece of PVC. And I used my router to set to the depth of the thickness of that little diamond plate. And I embedded them in the top of this surface. Of course, this MDF is gonna swell up from water, so I had to put like a billion coats of poly on this. That's why I think the acrylic could be better. But it did work out for me. These little diamond cards, all three, we've got blue coarse, red fine, and green extra fine. They actually stay in the little slots that I routed out. But a little, super glue isn't gonna hurt either. Oh, and least I forget, this jig that I'm holding, well, that's the final part of any manual sharpening set, whether you use sandpaper or stones or diamonds. There's a lot of expensive jigs out there, but this little guy is one of the best values in sharpening. Well, the new bench is framed in, and I think people are starting to see the pure genius of it. See, now I don't have to take off all that dust collection stuff. I can just slide it up under the bench and out of the way.
Oh, cool.
And I suppose we don't even need to pull it out to cut small stuff. But if I want to make some bigger cuts, we can just go straight back again. I love it when a plan comes together. Good work. Now we need another one built along that shop wall.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Well, that about wraps things up for this episode of Blue Collar Woodworking. Tune in next time for the skinny on power sharpening. Plus, we'll be building one of the world's greatest shop carts. If you like a more traditional approach to woodworking, check out the next episode of the Old Timey Workshop, where we'll be building a traditional saw bench by hand. And don't forget Mustache Mike's Corner for all of your scrolling needs. Those can all be seen over at stumpynubs.com. In the meantime, why don't you just go ahead and sit back, have yourself a cold one. Because you have earned it, my friend.